This is the story of Jonathan and Susie Lamb, a couple whose lives took an unimaginable turn when their young daughter revealed a painful truth in November 2020. The path they have walked since then has been filled with obstacles, uncertainty, and resistance. But through it all, they have remained steadfast, determined to uncover the truth and protect their child. As we explore their story, we are left with pressing questions. How did this tragedy unfold? Why has there been so much resistance in seeking justice? And what does this case reveal about the systems meant to protect the vulnerable? For Jonathan and Susie, life was moving along as any family would expect, filled with love, faith, and the everyday joys and challenges of raising a child. However, their sense of security was shattered when their daughter confided in Susie, sharing something no parent ever wants to hear. The weight of her words was crushing, and Susie knew she had to act immediately. A mother's instinct is a powerful force, and Susie wasted no time in reporting the matter to the authorities. Law enforcement launched an investigation, and the child's school was questioned. However, to the family's shock and confusion, the inquiry led nowhere. No male employees at the school matched the description given by their daughter. The case was quickly closed, leaving the family without answers. But one detail stood out: a description of an adult figure taller than her father. This puzzling element raised even more questions. If the perpetrator was not found at the school, then who was responsible? Had something been overlooked? And most disturbingly, was there a deeper reason for the lack of progress in the investigation? Despite their disappointment, the Lamb family refused to give up. In August 2021, they pursued further evaluation, hoping to find clarity. However, they were met with another crushing blow. A forensic psychologist determined that the accused individual was innocent. The conclusion was presented as final, leaving the family with little room to argue. But how could this be? Their daughter's account had been clear, her pain undeniable. The Lambs struggled to accept this outcome, feeling as though the doors to justice had been slammed shut. The emotional toll was immense, yet their faith and determination kept them going. Then, 2 years later, in November 2023, the case took a shocking turn. New information began to emerge, pointing to the possibility of a cover-up. This revelation reignited Jonathan and Susie's determination, pushing them to demand that the case be reopened. What they once feared was a tragic dead end now appeared to be something much more sinister, an attempt to bury the truth. Refusing to stay silent, Jonathan and Susie made the difficult decision to share their story publicly. In August 2024, they took a courageous step forward, speaking out and shedding light on the inconsistencies and unanswered questions surrounding their daughter's case. Their testimony sent ripples through various communities, especially among those who believed in standing up for the truth. Then, in November 2024, their case reached an even wider audience. New revelations surfaced, shaking the faith-based and ministry world, raising concerns about how such cases are handled and the barriers families face in their pursuit of justice. As more people became aware of their story, experts began weighing in. One such expert was forensic counselor Debbie, who was interviewed by investigative journalist Laura Lynn Thompson. Debbie's insights were eye-opening. While respecting the privacy of those involved, she confirmed that something deeply traumatic had indeed happened to the Lamb's daughter, something that could not and should not be ignored. This case is more than just a tragic story. It is a call to action. It highlights the struggles families face when seeking justice for their children, the bureaucratic roadblocks that often stand in the way, and the painful reality of institutions that sometimes fail to protect the vulnerable. Jonathan and Susie's journey is far from over. Their faith has been tested, their endurance pushed to the limit, but they continue to fight for the truth. Their hope is that by speaking out, they will not only find justice for their daughter, but also help prevent similar cases from being dismissed or covered up in the future. Now, as we listen to Debbie's insights, we must ask ourselves, what happens when those in power refuse to seek the truth? How many other families have faced the same struggles in silence? And what can we do to ensure that justice is served, no matter how uncomfortable the truth may be? Let's listen to what Debbie had to say.
You met with Jonathan and Susie first. want to make sure I've got that right, because Jonathan always wants to clarify all of that. But
that is correct.
It's correct. Okay, so you met with them first, and if you could tell me sort of what was portrayed as what had happened, and what you saw as the red flags that there was a big concern for their daughter.
Again, the most important thing was the changes in behavior. Children frequently, especially at preschool age, cannot totally explain in words everything that they are going through. And so the way they express is in their behavior. All changes that happen in behavior to a child should be carefully examined, because this is how you may know other parents, other people may know that something has happened. If they don't want to go somewhere, if they don't want to be around somebody, even with her physical body, Jonathan and Susie's daughter was telling them that something was wrong. Something was radically wrong.
Yes, that's correct. Well, Jonathan and Susie, and I'm sure that they shared this with you as well, but one of the things was if they would go to Daystar, and if the alleged Pete walked into the room, the daughter would just literally melt, like literally shake, crawl under a table. Would this be the kind of behavior that would significantly make it seem as if she's having a reaction that would be normal in the case of an SA?
Yes, absolutely.
And so were you able to see the precious young lamb by herself?
I believe that Denise Boggs was there with me.
Yes.
As we tried to get her to open up. But I was totally unsuccessful at doing that. Like I said, I had never seen a child that was so totally shut down or closed off.
Mm-hmm. And that is the testimony of Jonathan and Susie, that she was able to disclose to them some very important details and very detailed explanation of what someone was doing to her. And she was also able to disclose that to Joni Lamb. Joni Lamb then went with Susie to the school because they were concerned about where on earth would someone have had this kind of access to the girl, not wanting to ever think that it's a family member. And Debbie, can you tell me, if it is a family member, is it typically people don't want to believe it? Is that a regular sort of feeling? Like, it can't be, the grandfather, it can't be an uncle, it can't be the brother, like, it's typical not to want to believe that.
Yes, unless the entire family has grown up in a culture of that. It was a pleasure meeting with Jonathan and Susie, but from the very first time I sat down with them, I was concerned about what they had told me about the behavioral and emotional changes that was going on in the life of their daughter. And so I did have an opportunity to meet with their daughter. And quite frankly, I was convinced that something had happened to this little girl. And I say that after 20 years of serving as a school counselor and making literally 100 or more reports about SA and looking at her behaviors. And from what Jonathan and Susie shared with me, I was convinced that their daughter had indeed been affected by something very serious. And so I encouraged them to immediately get her to a counselor in the Dallas, Texas area. They were at a retreat center when I saw them, and they were here in North Carolina. And I knew I couldn't follow up on a weekly basis with this young girl. So I encouraged them to find a counselor in their area and then take the steps of reporting in Texas that they needed to. And especially that included meeting with perhaps a police officer or the Department of Social Services or Child Protective Services in the Texas area. But from the time that I first saw her, she was just simply closed down as much as any child that I've ever worked with. And it really broke my heart when I had to say to her parents, yes, I think you are right. Something has happened to your daughter. But it was clear from what they said to me in terms of the radical change in behavior that she had undergone from being outspoken and from being very lively to this closed off little girl that really did not speak and who just hid her head. And much of the time that I tried to enter into a conversation with her, she was just huddled up and closed off. And I was terribly concerned about her.
Could this be the underlying reason why Joni Lamb has consistently resisted calls for an independent investigation? Is there a deeper concern that an impartial review might finally uncover long-buried truths? Debbie's analysis raises a number of pressing and thought-provoking questions, but one particular moment in the timeline stands out as especially significant and potentially revealing. According to Jonathan and Susie, in the aftermath of the alleged incident, Joni Lamb personally requested a private meeting with their daughter. But why? What was the purpose of this meeting, and what exactly was said during that conversation? Could something have been discussed that caused the child to suddenly withdraw and stop speaking about what had happened? Was there an attempt to influence or dissuade her from coming forward? What changed between the initial claims and her abrupt silence? Even more troubling is the timing. Why did Joni Lamb take action so swiftly before law enforcement or any official authorities had the opportunity to intervene? Was this an effort to control the situation, manage potential fallout, or shape the narrative before the truth could fully emerge? These lingering questions cast a shadow over the entire situation, leaving many to wonder whether the full story has yet to be told.
Debbie, one of the things that took place was that as soon as there had been this kind of disclosure from the child initially before they came to see you, there had been a disclosure that was very, very alarming to Susie. And so she wanted to go to the police. And what she did, because she trusted Joni Lamb, she called her And immediately she was told, no, let's not go to the police, just bring the child to me. Now, in your professional opinion, if anyone has a child that has disclosed something, what are the steps that should be taken immediately?
Okay. First of all, you need to make certain that not too many people intervene in that process. It needs to go immediately to a police officer who has been trained, or to a child protective services personnel who has been trained in the specific techniques of eliciting information without planting anything in a child's mind. And so, generally speaking, the fewer people, the better before you get them to that place. You don't want to ask a lot of leading questions. You want to just assure the child, tell them that they are going to be safe, and immediately present them to people who can carry out the investigation. And other people that may be well-meaning or not, but certainly you don't want to allow any contamination of the story, and you don't really want to allow other people to speak into that situation.
And in this case, some of that took place, different voices, and also just a general desire of the Lamb family not to go to the police. And I think that's maybe the most difficult part, is that because of all of the cover-up, because of the protection of the ministry, and this had been sort of a pattern in many different circumstances, including the essay of Susie, actually, by another person right there on the Daystar grounds, from what I understand. I'm actually not certain where it happened, but because of this cover-up sort of mentality, things did not get handled well.
This situation is a heartbreaking reminder of how easily priorities can become distorted within ministries that are meant to stand for truth and righteousness. As followers of Christ, we are called to protect the vulnerable, to be a voice for the voiceless, and to stand firmly against injustice. Yet, in too many cases, the focus shifts away from these core principles. Instead of prioritizing truth, compassion, and accountability, some seem more concerned with safeguarding reputations, financial interests, or personal connections. But at what cost? When those in positions of influence choose to protect institutions over individuals, the consequences can be devastating. This is not just about one family's pain or a single tragic event. It is about the broader responsibility of those who claim to lead in faith. It is about the moral obligation to uphold integrity, transparency, and justice within the church. At the center of this situation is an innocent 5-year-old girl, a child who deserved to be protected, supported, and heard. Yet, instead of rallying around her with love and care, some have chosen to suppress the truth, dismiss concerns, and silence those who dare to speak out. If there is nothing to hide, why resist a fair and impartial investigation? If the accused is truly innocent, an honest and thorough examination of the facts should be embraced, not avoided. True healing and restoration cannot come through secrecy and denial. They can only be found in the light of truth. When institutions and their followers prioritize image over integrity, they betray the very foundations of faith. What makes this even more troubling is the way some individuals have responded, not by seeking understanding or justice, but by using social media and public influence to shame victims and discredit whistleblowers. Instead of showing Christ-like compassion, they have added to the trauma, deepening the wounds of those who have already suffered. Why is it that the burden so often falls on victims to prove their innocence, while those in positions of power are automatically shielded? Why is questioning authority seen as an attack rather than a necessary pursuit of truth? Despite the backlash and personal attacks they have endured, Jonathan and Susie are not driven by revenge. Their goal is not to tear down, but to bring accountability where it is desperately needed. They are fighting for something far greater than personal vindication. They are fighting for honesty, for justice, and for the integrity of Christian leadership. Those who claim to serve God in positions of influence must be held to the highest moral and ethical standards. Their actions, decisions, and responses to challenges should reflect the very teachings they preach. This is not just about exposing wrongdoing. It is about protecting the innocent and upholding God's command to seek justice. It is about ensuring that churches, ministries, and faith communities remain places of safety, healing, and truth rather than spaces where abuse is covered up and victims are silenced. Let this serve as a powerful reminder that even in the darkest of situations, the light of truth will always shine through. No matter how much some may try to suppress it, justice cannot be erased or denied forever. It may be delayed, but it will not be stopped. If this message has resonated with you, remember this: faith is not about blind loyalty. It is about unwavering courage. It is about standing for what is right, even when it is difficult, even when it is unpopular. True faith does not ignore injustice. It confronts it head-on. Let us continue to hold those in leadership accountable, to demand transparency, and to protect the most vulnerable among us. That is what genuine faith requires. That is what Christ calls us to do. If you believe in spreading the message of truth, integrity, and justice in Christian leadership, please like, share, and subscribe. Together, we can ensure that the church remains a place of righteousness, not secrecy. Stay strong in your faith, never stop seeking justice, and always stand for what is right. God bless you all, and we'll see you in the next video.